by managing our expectations of what validation we're going to get. And if we take back all the power, then you're not reliant on other people's validation.
People can sometimes go down the hard path, whether they're wanting to start a business, wanting to fix their relationship, wanting to improve their health and wellness, whatever. Go on Google, do some searches, go watch some stuff on YouTube. And it's like, it's actually going to be a harder path for you to go down. Find people who, what did this person say to you that made you hang up the phone? And then I'm assuming the next day was the start of new Laban.
Time to get fired up. Yeah, I'm getting fired up.
Your thoughts can become plans. Plans can become actions. And actions become a reality. We share powerful stories and simple steps to fast track your business and personal growth. Are you ready to make it happen? Let's get fired up. Laban's journey stands as a testament to the power of personal ownership and growth. Alcohol-free since 2016 without the aid of a formal addiction recovery program, and almost 9 years free from gambling, Laban has overcome formidable challenges, emerging as a beacon of hope and inspiration. His childhood experiences may resonate with many. They include divorce, family, division, poverty, tragedy, and the escapism behaviours that fueled his addictions. Born to a New Zealand mother and Australian father, Laban offers a unique perspective on the cultural phenomenon of tall poppy syndrome and the pervasive self-deprecating humour that can subconsciously hinder us from reaching our full potential. As a critically acclaimed author, Laban's insights have earned accolades from notable figures across various industries. His book not only chronicles his journey, but also offers practical strategies for personal transformation. Those who engage with Laban often undergo significant shifts in perspective. They envision possibilities previously unimagined, find the courage for bold and decisive action, and come to appreciate their experiences as a newfound wellsprings of strength. So as we dive into this episode, be prepared to write some stuff down and take away some key tactics and strategies that Laban implemented. This guy really knows what he's talking about, and he'll have a lot of very useful, actionable steps that you can implement into your life. We want to talk to Laban today around a whole bunch of stuff and particularly things that are written and outlined in his book, Bet On You, which we will get into. Labe, thanks for joining us, mate. It's awesome to see you. I don't think I've seen you since 2008 or 9 in Melbourne. I'm looking at a very different person to what I saw back then. But I want to hit off with a question, and we were just talking about this before we started filming. Why do people who know that they need to change and they know exactly what they need to do to change, why don't they do it?
Let's just start off with a nice easy one, shall we? Good kid. It is, mate. It's such a thrill to see you again. And good kid is an iteration from the years of bad kid was your nickname.
It was,
and,
yeah.
It was said with affection. It was pretty funny. But we decided with the power of language and negative self-talk that it was no longer bad kid. It's going to be good kid. And I love being able to say, hey, good kid now. You know, we're grown 40-something-year-old men, and it's good kid. My first instinct is really, I don't think people are in enough pain to do anything about it. And the example that I'll give you is that my moment of rock bottom was when I was 35. It was a Tuesday night. It was midnight. I'm at home in my shared apartment back in Melbourne. I'm blowing the last of my rent money that I've just borrowed to pay the rent, and I'm gambling on a horse race in Hong Kong out of Melbourne. And I'm not even watching it on TV. I'm just like F5ing and refreshing the page to see whether I've won. Yeah. Like pathological gambling behavior. And I was like, the direction that my life is heading, this is a disaster. This isn't what I thought that I was going to do when I was a kid. And so it was that thought that I had that propelled me to ring the Gamblers Helpline, which was, the number was in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, a screen that I'd been on many, many times before. And I didn't even think about the ramifications of what I was doing. I was like, the pain of an action is far greater than the pain of change. And I think it's a very important point. It's why it's so hard to coach and work with people that do not want help, because they're not ready. it's comfortable enough, and it can be very uncomfortable. It's like getting a stone in your shoe when you're walking. You might be able to do it for the first 1 or 2 kilometers, but if you're going to be running a 100-kilometer ultra marathon, you don't want that stone in your shoe. It's going to be the thing that undoes you. So that's just my initial thoughts. I'm sure it's a lot more complex than that, but I think it's a good place to start.
Yeah. Because the conversations I've had with people is like, they do know what they need to do. They are frustrated by it. There is a high element of pain there. Yet I think it's the uncertainty of all the unknown next. So it's like, yeah, I hate my job. I don't want to do this. I'd love to quit. My boss is an asshole. Okay, fucking quit. But the first thing that enters their head is, what am I going to do? I got bills to pay. And I got all of that. I had the same feeling, mate. Like, right? And other people I've spoken to have gone on their journeys. No one's ever said, I wasn't scared. I wasn't concerned at all. Like this was a given. It's always been set with a bunch of concerns about what might come out of it. But I think like in your story there, like you rang this gambler's helpline. What did this person say to you that made you hang up the phone? And then I'm assuming the next day was the start of New Laban.
Is what she didn't say.
Right.
And she didn't judge me. She listened to me without judgment for the first time in my life. And that was a powerful moment, because if someone in your life has reached a position of rock bottom, or a place where they are like totally cooked, and they share with you vulnerably what's happening, the worst thing that you can do is go into problem-solving mode if they haven't asked you for help. And so she just sat there. She was a professional. She'd been doing this for 30 years. Her name was Mary. And I'll never know her last name, but I'll call her Mary Magdalene, because she was a guardian angel, whether she realized it or not. But she listened without judgment. And then when I was finished, then she started sharing some ideas that really humbled me. One of the things that put the fear of God onto me was that she said, Laban, out of all the destructive behaviors, the drugs and gambling and all this, like alcohol abuse, gambling is by far and away has the highest amount of suicide because of how quickly you lose everything. So in addition to the feeling of rock bottom and helplessness, I was like, I don't want to kill myself. And I could see it heading in that trajectory as well, because gambling is so insidious. It was just, and the culture in Australia and New Zealand, particularly with horse racing and sports betting, is just prolific. And I had to self-exclude from about 13 different betting agencies when I first gave up. So, but just going back to what you said real quick, it's what she didn't say that was powerful, and it was just being heard for the first time in my life. So the lesson there is, and the reason I'm really telling you this, is that if someone opens up to you about something as profound as that, the best thing you can do is just shut up and listen and just be there for them.
Yeah. And then, so next day, what happened? Like, I kind of want to paint a picture of like, so you're doing this gambling, drinking, and you realize that that's all shit and not the life that you had envisioned for yourself. I assume you've got a job at this point. Like, what were you doing?
Yeah, I was working in white collar, doing IT recruitment. I was earning good money. I had, colleagues that liked me. My boss knew that I was reliable. I showed up on time, and was fundamentally a good member of society. But it was all falling apart underneath. Yeah. And the next day, off the back of the conversation I had with Mary, was that she put me in touch with the Salvation Army gambling counselling service. And for 1.5 years, I got access to this incredible counsellor who specialised in my addiction for free, funded by the taxes from gambling losses. So for the first time in my gambling career, I was actually up. I actually zeroed out all my lost income over 1.5 years of all this high-end therapy. And if you're listening to this or watching this in a country that doesn't have that, I feel very sorry for you. See what you can do to find a service that can help you with that.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's there for.
Yeah.
And it was so powerful.
Were you gambling on reflection? Were you actually trying to make money, or you were hooked on the high of the process and the win?
No, it was very self-destructive. I was chasing the high. And I call it, when people reference heroin addiction, they call it chasing the dragon. And I say I was chasing the dragon, except my dragon was a purebred horse. And, as I would win, because I would lay these outrageous multi-bets, and very occasionally they would come in and they'd be 3 or 4, 5, 6,000 Australian dollars. And then the next bet that you put on is congruent to your winnings. So and then boom. And there was issues around money from my childhood, because I grew up in poverty, which is very character building, but I grew up with a poverty mindset, which did all the damage. So in addition to undoing all of the dysfunctional behaviors that I've learned from growing up and just my peers and TV and radio, whatever you want to call it, like I've had to relearn the functional version. And this has only been in the last 7 or 8 years. So my relationship with money and gambling was like the multiplier, excuse the pun, like way worse than most other people, because I didn't care that I was losing until I had to pay the rent. And then I was cooked.
Do you think you've got an addictive personality?
The obvious answer would be yes. What was it about the things that I was getting addicted to that made it so addictive? Like when I gave up all the dysfunctional stuff, then it became long distance running. And some would argue that that's maybe an unhealthy addiction as well. I mean, I wouldn't say that it is. It was an incredible experience I had in my life, and it allowed me to reset this glass ceiling in my mind of what my body thought was possible. But I've been basically addicted to everything that you can get. If you imagine if Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and Charlie Sheen had a baby, like that might be me. You know what I mean? So and I'm very proud to sit here before you today, Ben, and like I'm 8 years sober in August for booze. It's longer for gambling, longer for infidelity. Like I'm in a monogamous, happy marriage. Like anything that you could get hooked to, I basically latch onto. Including Haagen-Dazs vanilla ice cream. Which I would argue I'm still in a battle with at times. So don't judge me. Pray for me.
Yeah. Well, this is a bit of a sideline question. It was also something that you put up the other day, but something that's also been on my mind and irritating me for many years. How important is your parents' approval or even just their support, regardless of where you're at in your life? Like, is that something that you feel that you need personally?
Man, this is really close to the bone.
Yeah.
So if you'd asked me that same question maybe even 6 months ago, I would have said, yes, it's very important. But I've come to learn that it has to become unimportant.
Yeah.
Because you are placing an expectation on someone who, for many people, will never deliver that end of the bargain. They will never give you the acknowledgement. The example I'll give you, and maybe this is the post you reference, Mother's Day in the Southern Hemisphere the other day, and I called my mum, her and I used to have a very unhealthy, dysfunctional relationship for years. We would speak to each other maybe once a year, and it would always end in a fight. And anyway, she's really come around the last few years, and it was because I set some clear boundaries about our relationship and all this other stuff. And we get on a phone call for Mother's Day, and within 5 minutes, we're having a fight. And it was regarding something totally innocuous. Let's just call it that. She basically she was like, what do you think about Ozempic, right? This weight loss drug. And my mum, my darling mother, she got liposuction about 15 years ago, and it bruised her for 6 months. Like it didn't work. Just go low carb, people, and you don't need to spend $20,000 on getting fat sucked out of your body and the opportunity to get a staph infection and kill you, But the argument came up, and then she said, well, you're not living your life in integrity either. And I said, what is it that I'm doing that's so bad? She said, it's what you wrote in your book. Now, bear in mind, Mum and Dad get a mention in the book, but I made them out to be saints when I if I was vindictive, I could have torn them to shreds, but I made them look like saints. But I also was honest about what happened because it was as an integral part of the story. I don't want to gloss over it. And she's like, you accused me of doing something that wasn't true in the book. And I was like, what was it? And like, it was related to her throwing out my older brother on his birthday years ago. And I go, it happened. Like, I was there. It happened. Like, but why aren't you saying, congratulations, Laban, on being the first person in 30 generations to write a book in a family that has no history of formal education or any kind of success? The family has this generational lineage of dysfunction and alcoholism and abuse and all this other stuff. What about, hey, I'm so proud of you, son? I was like, why don't you just say that instead of nitpicking things in the book? And she ended up hanging up on me, you know, and then sent me a couple of text messages later on saying, I am proud of you. I am, and said all those things that all I just wanted when the book first came out from her. But I realized, Ben, that we place these expectations on people sometimes that aren't anywhere near ready to be able to deliver on that stuff. So by managing our expectations of what validation we're going to get, and if we take back all the power, then you're not reliant on other people's validation. And that can be, you know, it's a little bit nuanced and challenging at times, but for me, I've had to do that because the people in my life that I thought would be my number one fans in many cases have become my number one critics.
Yeah. Yeah. I when I saw that, same for me, it kind of rubbed a few areas about that relationship and you know, going back to being younger and the decisions they made and how you just get taken on that ride with them. You don't choose where you live. You don't choose what you eat. They're bringing people into the house. You got no choice in all of these things. And I couldn't fucking wait to get independent, to get away from that shit, because even if it wasn't going to work out, at least it's by my doing. But there still is this underlying want for approval or pride from the parents. So I now know I don't need it, but it would be nice to have. And what I commented against your post there was, as soon as I had my own kids, I've now got a pretty good training ground about what might be important to them, which is, sure, call them out when shit goes wrong, but also be there and actually celebrate and encourage the accomplishments that matter. Someone said the other day, like, parents are just grown-up kids in grown-up clothes. Like, they're still, you know, fundamentally a human, and they're going to make mistakes and everything else.
100%, yeah.
But it'll be interesting, and I've, you know, had people close to me who's, and I guess we're getting in that age bracket now where, you know, some of their parents are passing on. And as it gets into those last moments or days, if they're lucky enough to share that with their parents who are passing, parents are like, I love you, I'm proud of you, you've done it, and all this stuff. It's like,
yeah,
right at the end, like, thanks, I appreciate that, but I wish we could have done that previously.
Well, and I think a lot of people will struggle with what you're sharing as well, because it's like, it's easy. Now, I don't have kids yet, I'm working on it, but I got 4 nieces and nephews from my brother who are between like 10 and 3. And I shower them, not with false bravado, but like true compliments, and esteem them up and lift them up where possible in a way that I dreamed about receiving. But I think about my father, and like, full transparency, like, I've forgiven both my mum and dad, you know, in the last 5 or 6 years. There was a lot of forgiveness. It was part of the transformation. But my father, he grew up as a child of a loveless marriage, very dysfunctional relationship between his father and his mother. And his father never publicly acknowledged my dad. And my old man went on to become a really brilliant radio broadcaster in New Zealand and Radio Avon and Melbourne as well. And his father, to the best of my knowledge, never said, hey, son, I'm proud of you. He actually said to him, you'll never make a radio announcer's arsehole, when he was starting out. So I don't know what the issue is. I don't know whether my father's been so scarred from that experience, or he just doesn't know how to articulate the exact thing that we're asking. And unfortunately, with my old man, he's starting to get to an age now. He's starting to wear out. He's really unwell. Like, he didn't want to see me when I was down in Melbourne just a few weeks ago. He said, "Son, I'm not ready." And it floored me. I was devastated. He talked to my wife. I was like literally on the floor. But then I had lunch with my Uncle Robbie, my father's older brother, and he revealed some things that he had found out about the family that my dad had just learned. And it involves some abuse of his aunties and some other stuff that I won't go into here in too much detail. But then I had this massive burst of empathy for my father, the man who he pedestalized and idolized had just collapsed down around him. And he's been dead for years now. But can you imagine hearing that in your 70s? And I can understand now why he wasn't ready to spend time with anyone. So my point really here is try not to jump to conclusions about maybe why you're not getting the acknowledgement that you're after. Because sometimes it's just basically a situation where the people do not have, and I don't make excuses for people, but they don't have any of the skill set to be able to deliver anything of any significance and any meaning. And we just kind of need to just let them be with that. And I'm not saying you need to spend a lot of time with people like that, but that's just the reality of the situation, and find other people that will lift you up and will, bring you to the top.
Yeah. That's kind of where I was going to go with it, because I personally had accepted that many moons ago, and even moving to Australia, and most of my family is still back in Australia. But through building really good friendships and relationships, that need was now dissolved, because I've got people around me who actually do care about what I'm doing. They do care whether I'm progressing. They'll call me out on my shit when I start to slip or make mistakes or do things, which I love. I've always wanted that, but I guess the expectation was you'll get that first and foremost from your family. But I've actually got, I don't want to sound negative about family and stuff. They are my family. I'll love them and whatever. But I have a very close and deep relationship with the people around me that are actually uplifting and positive and encouraging and call me out on shit.
Well, Ben, this is a very important point, because people incorrectly, in my opinion, assume that because they are flesh and blood, that you must have a relationship with them. And maybe I'm erring on the side of maybe slightly more aggressive than most people you talk to. However, what I would say is the reason that I was able to even have an ongoing relationship with my mother was because I set a very strong boundary, because it got to the point where she would always talk about how bad my father was. They broke up in 1983, and she's talking about this in 2023. It's it's time to move on. If you can't talk to me and not bring this and you're going to bring this up, you don't get to be in my life. And I enforced that boundary, and all of a sudden she's like, I'm not going to get access to my son. I was willing to walk away from the relationship with my mother because the engagement from her was causing me so much grief. And then all of a sudden she came around and she's playing ball. So the lesson is, don't be afraid to set clear boundaries. You have to, because these people will just you enabling them. It's your fault, but it's also your responsibility. And setting that boundary, they'll either never come back into your life, or more than likely they'll come back around. And once you practice that a few times, it'll change the total trajectory of your life. And then that'll create the space to allow high quality people into your life. And that's all I'm making a priority right now.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Love it. When we just want to flick back to that job, because I'm keen around that transition. So you're in recruitment. When did that end, and what did you do next?
So I changed companies within probably 3-4 months, I think, of being in that job.
Yeah. And
went to a new company that I used to work at, but hey guys, I don't drink anymore, blah, blah, thinking that was going to help. For anyone that knows anything about recruitment, particularly white collar recruitment, it's very drug and alcohol, heavy. And it was, the transition really was forced upon me in 2018 is when I met my beautiful Anna, and we got pregnant. So I met her in September 2018. We got pregnant for the first time in December. And unfortunately, we lost that through an ectopic pregnancy, but she nearly died in the process. And I used to work for the small boutique woke recruitment company that had 2 female CEOs running the thing, and they were all inclusive and diversity and equity and inclusion, all sort of stuff. But when they found out that I was taking time off to go and support my then soon-to-be wife, because it was only early in the relationship, like she nearly died. Like she hemorrhaged internally and nearly died because of medical malpractice. Like, and I'm dealing with this, and there was a way that they treated me like a leper. I was like, take your job and stick it up your backside. And I went out on my own in 2019. And I was like, this is the thing, I'm going to make money from recruitment. And then 2019 was a total unmitigated financial disaster. And I say that for effect because I didn't make a single placement in recruitment, but I was spending all my time reading and researching all the things that have become important with what I do now. Fast forward to the end of 2019, I'm destitute. So I, cap in hand, go and get a job working for another recruitment company. And 7 weeks later, the world shuts down because of COVID. Yeah. And I'm locked in my home in Melbourne with no other choice but like, how am I going to get my message out to the world? And I was like, I'm going to create a podcast series. And then I used that time for all of 2020 to record. I think did 100 episodes of the podcast, and then I wrote the book in May and June of 2020. So then that was, my hand was forced, because when I planned to move into the speaking and coaching and transformational space, I was like, I'll do it in a year. And then COVID hit and was like, you'll do it now. And I'm like, okay, God, yeah, whatever. Let's do it. Let's do it.
I don't know if I read it in the book or you've told me, but didn't it get to a point where you were selling masks and sanitizer and stuff?
So as luck would have it, there was massive bushfires. Not that that's lucky. In Victoria in January 2020. I think that might have been in other parts of the country as well. So to make a quid, I found a supplier and had all these N95 and, you know, these masks that would help people with the smog. And then so when COVID kicked in, I was like, you beauty. And I was selling these masks and hand sanitizer. And it was enough to survive, because 2019 had been such a blast, like negatively financially, that I didn't qualify for any of the government handouts during COVID. I was eligible for the dole, which was about $250 a fortnight, and the rent was $3,300 a month. You know, like things didn't match up. But then Facebook Marketplace and eBay forbid non-approved vendors from selling these masks and hand sanitizer. Yeah. So that cut me out, and then the price of those went through the roof, and I was just like, so I had to go all in on, right, I'm stuck at home. I'm going to do this thing. And then the podcast just opened up my whole entire planet and brought people in proximity into my life that have really transformed me.
What was the aim of that podcast? Like back then when you were first starting, what was the message you were trying to get out there?
So the show's called Become Your Own Superhero, or Become Your Own Superhero Podcast. And I loved the idea of people taking control of becoming their own hero, because there was so many Marvel and DC movies where people idolize these superheroes. And I'm like, wasn't it cooler to be your own superhero? So I wanted to leverage other people's audiences by bringing them on in an interview style, much like this. Yeah. And asking them how they did certain things. I had great advice from a coach saying, seek out people that have achieved what you want to achieve. And take advice. So I just brought all these amazing people into my life. And because I had all this cold calling experience from my failed recruitment business, I was pretty fearless when it came to calling these A-list guests. And I had a really powerful phone call with Brene Brown on the 2nd of January, 2020, long before I had my book, the podcast, or anything of any significance. And the way that she responded to me gave me the confidence to keep reaching out to people. And then I reached out to Les Brown, the very famous transformational speaker out of America, interviewed him. And on that call, he gave me the blueprint for the book and the title, Bet on You, and then said, Laban, I'll interview you on my 4.5 million subscriber platform, and I'll write the foreword to your book. And that's when it all kicked off. It gave me this unstoppable mindset, self-belief of like, right, this is me now. And all the trauma of the failed business and the miscarriages and all the other stuff kind of just paled in the background. And, you know, I'm not saying things have not been challenging, because it's been unbelievably challenging being a brand new entrepreneur. But what a great gift. So I suppose the point of sharing this with you is that if you're going through this experience at the moment where you are in a shitstorm of a job that you despise, or you're in a marriage that you can't stand the other person, like, these are what I call the gift of adversity. And it's a sign from the universe, where I think the universe or God, whatever you want to call it, gives you these gentle taps.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, Laban, come on. And we ignore them. And then he goes, whack. And you're like, unemployed, divorced, you know, heart attack, whatever. And then you're forced to do something about it. So see if you can identify it a touch earlier.
Before you become reactive.
A little bit, yeah.
Proactive triggers. The you mentioned there around, like, with the cold calling and stuff, but you're actually ringing people who have done amazing things, or who could inspire or actually help with getting that message across. And I think, you know, through what we're doing here, that's really what we're trying to push through, is giving people those real life experiences, because it's all very similar once you actually start to unpack it. The problem was coming. We could see it coming. So I wanted to proactively change that. But you're right, most people are reactive. So I guess I want to dig into a bit when it comes to actually seeking out these people. I told you outside about the guy running around the street for a similar situation. That's just so outside of my normal comfort zone. But now that I've done it, it's now encouraged me to go, oh, hang on, this isn't that bad. It's not that scary. I can go it again. But the question was, like, if you do not have the right skills and understanding in a certain area, how important is it to seek out these people and ask for help? Not just, hey, can I get some of your thoughts and advice, but also to pay to play. You know, seek out a coach, seek out a mentor, seek out a platform or someone who can actually help you through that process. Like, I know that you offer this as a service, and so do we, but how important is it to actually go after that kind of support?
I would attribute a lot of the speed of the success that I had in my healing journey because I got access to a life coach out of Mauritius. And a friend of mine, Sammy Skinner, who I talk about in the book, is a dear friend of mine. I said to him randomly one day, I said, do you know any life coaches? And he's the least likely guy to be able to answer that. He goes, yeah, my mother-in-law's one. And I was like, fantastic. She hooked me up. I think it was like $1,500 for like 3 months, you know, which compared to what you can invest in yourself now. Like I didn't have much money at all. So, but she gave me the gift of like some basic goal setting and stuff that I had no clue about, because I used to read a book a year if I was lucky.
Yeah.
Right. Now I've read, I think I've pumped through about 750 books in the last 6 years.
Wow.
And a lot of that's been to do with the guests that I interview, and I want to research them, and do you know what I mean? But I've become a ferocious learner because I'm trying to find as many people as I can that can help me along on that journey. And then I'm doing a lot of self-education as well, because there's an element of personal responsibility that you have to take. And if you are to become someone of value to other people, like, because you can repurpose everything that you're being taught, and once you've implemented it and you've got credibility, you can teach it to other people.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's an investment with coaching it up front in yourself, and it's your money, but like then you can use it to do exactly the same for other people. Because a lot of the stuff you're talking about is principles.
That's right. Yeah.
Principles that just don't change. And that's why, like, there's a great quote, if motivational speakers were so effective, all of the crew that man these events would be skinny, rich, and happy. But like going back to the point around, you have to want help. So like you have to learn how to do it, and then you can pass that on to the next thing, because it becomes this selfless, self-perpetuating momentum that you want to create in your life, and you're constantly leveling up. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but
yeah, I mean, it does. I think people can sometimes go down the hard path, whether they're wanting to start a business, wanting to fix their relationship, wanting to improve their health and wellness, whatever, go on Google, do some searches, go watch some stuff on YouTube. And it's like, that's actually going to be a harder path for you to go down. Find people who have done what you want to do or have gone through that transition or similar story, because you'll be surprised how like niche you can go into that space, right?
Yeah.
Like, I only want to talk to people who are a single, divorced mother of 3 who's dealing with PTSD. You'll find that person does exist, right? So I want to go and actually have that conversation with them because they can relate. And I'm sure you do this in your coaching business, but certainly, I do and have as well. If someone calls me and wants help with transforming their business because they're stuck or they don't have the right systems, procedures, structure in place, marketing, whatever, and I go through that process of going like, I think you call it like a suitability call or something like that.
Yeah.
So we go through that, and if I can actually kind of unpack their current state and their future state and have a look under the hood to see what's going on, if I can't add value there, or if we're not a fit, we ain't working together.
Yeah.
But here's some people who you might want to talk to who could help you, because obviously I want the result for them, but I only also want to have an impact on things where I can add value and can make a difference in it.
Yeah.
Do you apply the same sort of structure?
100%. And I've got a very strict list that I created for myself in terms of what I will tolerate from a coaching client, because particularly a lot of times you work together for 12 months, like you're tethered at the hip with this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think what I love about what you're doing in your business, Ben, as well, having known you for as long as I have, you were the original go-getter out of everyone that I knew. You were the guy that got me my first white-collar job selling mobile phones back in 1999.
Yeah.
Back when data was 36 cents a kilobit. When I worked out my data bill a couple of years ago, if it had been the same rate, it was $8.5 million for the month. True story.
200 free off-peak minutes though after 7 p.m. and 9 p.m.
Yeah. But and then the whole time I've been observing you, and we haven't been super close for the last decade or so, but just seeing your progression and what you've learned makes you a very credible resource when it comes to talking about the thing that you're offering as a coaching product. And that's the thing that I think you really want to be looking for. Going back to what I was saying, you want to find people that have already achieved what it is that you want. And a really good coach on an accountability call like that will say to you, do you know what? I don't think I can help you with that in the way that you're going to need, but this mofo can. And that's part of this network of high quality human beings that I'm constantly building, because I want to be a person of value by being able to refer the single mum with 3 kids to someone who's a lot more patient and gentle and less aggressive than what I would be. Because I'm all about fast action and quick turnarounds, and people pay you for that.
Yeah.
But I'm not suitable for someone who's just, Laban in 2016.
If you've enjoyed this episode, then subscribe on YouTube or follow our podcast on your favorite platform. We drop a new episode every week. You'll be doing us a massive favor. If you know someone that would benefit from listening to this, then share it with them. You'll be doing them a massive favor. And if you want the tips, tools, and resources to support you on this journey, then join our exclusive Facebook community and follow our socials. You'll be doing yourself a massive favor.